real solutions to money, relationships, wellness, and more. Shine a light onto your day and into your life. Power Your Life with Dr. Joanne White.
Good evening and welcome to Power Your Life. I'm your host, Joanne White. My first guest tonight is the very courageous Josefina Rivera. On November 26, 1986, serial killer Gary Heinrich picked her up off a corner, took her home, and had sex with her. He then chained her to a water pipe in his basement, and he kept her there for 4 grueling months. He then captured 5 more women and killed 2 of them. Josefina escaped in March of 1987 and saved the remaining women and herself. Her testimony put Heinrich on death row, and years later, she's sharing her incredible story and in her recently released book, Cellar Girl. Josefina will be with us in a few moments, but first, I'd like us to take a look at the case. I can't watch it.
You got, what's his name coming?
Gary Heinrich had an IQ of a near genius, but his intelligence was channeled into evil, and he was consumed with his master plan. He lured 6 women into his basement and chained them to the pipes. He tortured them with household appliances so they couldn't hear, and blared the radio at full volume to mask any cries for help. He beat them with a shovel, and to prevent them from teaming up, he made them beat each other. He raped them daily.
One was led to ask, was this master plan the act of a madman, or was it so calculated that it could only be the work of pure evil? The only way we can try to understand a man like Gary Heinrich is to look back at his past and to examine the factors that may have created such a person.
Gary Heinrich had an unusual childhood. He grew up in Cleveland and lived with his allegedly abusive father in constant fear of being beaten. His father once disciplined Gary by hanging him by his feet out a 3rd-story window. When Gary wet his bed, his father would hang his sheet out to show the neighbors and humiliate him. After falling from a tree at age 6 and suffering brain damage, Heinrich's behavior seemed to change. Animals he had once nurtured, he began to tie up and hang from trees.
Heinrich is interesting because he exhibits so many of the experiences that are common among serial killers. The childhood abuse, for example, animal torture, injuries, and also a history of mental illness.
Gary Heinrich claimed to have delusions throughout his life, once hearing the voice of God as he drove, who told Heinrich to start a church. He installed himself as bishop and held services to a handful of churchgoers just above his dungeon of torture, even as his victims suffered below. Heinrich's master plan was to force all of his female captives to bear his children so he could start a community of his own followers. But as the months passed and none became pregnant, his cruelty became even more extreme. Heinrich experimented with a new torture. He shocked his captives with jolts of electricity. The first captive died of electrocution. Weeks later, a second captive died, this time of starvation. Heinrich put the remains in a blender, mixed them with cans of dog food, then forced the others to consume it.
This is a guy who was consumed by systematic, prolonged torture, not over hours, but months. It was truly the kind of thing that sickens anyone who hears the story.
Heinrich's trial centered on his sanity, and his defense claimed psychosis.
During Heinrich's trial, there was a court psychiatrist who quipped that if there was an Olympics for mental illness, Heinrich would win a gold medal.
But attributing his crimes to mental illness may be too simple.
Heinrich was a much more organized and integrated person despite his grandiosity and peculiarities and moments of mental illness, and he was nowhere near as crazy as Ed Gein.
Heinrich had opened a brokerage account and turned a small investment into more than $500,000, from which he bought a Rolls-Royce and other luxury cars.
You can look at Heinrich's past and see psychosis, you can see paranoia, abuse, all of these things that may have contributed to what he did. But what he did, systematically torturing those women over months, is nothing short of evil.
Here with me now is Josefina Rivera. Thank you so much, Josefina. I've watched this. This is the first time that I've actually seen this, and I'm trying to hold back my tears.
Right.
So I can't even imagine what you endured.
We endured a lot. We really endured a lot. I truly endured a lot, especially in the beginning, being the first one. I could just so remember just sleeping with handcuffs behind my back every night and chains on my ankles, and I would wake up and just think it was a dream, you know.
Or a nightmare, really.
A nightmare.
Right. During that time, what kept you going? What kept you alive throughout all the torture and the cruelty that you endured on a daily basis?
You know, through the strength of God, and I just said I'm going out of here the way I came in here. If I walked in here, I'm going to walk out of here.
So that was really that's what kept you focused
yes,
on that you're going to get at, the sense of determination.
Right.
What was the interaction between you and the other women?
It was really, really very difficult. I mean, we're in a situation where none of us know each other, and each one is dealing with different mental stability. And you know, I tried my best, being the first one down there, trying to calm everybody that came down. It didn't always work, you know, but, you know, you try to, you know, sit down and talk and try to keep them, you know, you ask them about their family and their kids and their life, and, you know, try to make it a little bit normalcy for them as much as possible, you know, and try to say, well, hey, you're going to be all right, you know, we're going to try to get out of here alive. And it was difficult at times. It was. When Sandra died, me and Sandra had been there from the beginning, so when Sandra died, it just really broke my heart, and it just really made me see the severity of Gary Heinrich.
Did you think you were next after she died? Did you think that he was going to go after you?
Oh, at that point, it was like anything could happen. You know, it was like a day-by-day thing. It was just, each day was worse than the day before. You know, and it just never seemed like it was getting any better.
Did you ever think, Josefina, that you were going to get out of there? Did you ever plot it? Did you ever talk
I
to the other
didn't plot it. I really didn't realize how much Gary Heinrich actually liked me and how much I was getting through to him until the last few days. I knew I was going to get out of there one way or another. I mean, that was like my ultimate goal, was to make sure that I got out safely and he couldn't get to me and he couldn't get back to the other girls and get rid of them, you know. And so I don't know if there was a plan, but it worked out.
But a sense of survival that you
Yes.
had to keep yourself going throughout, no matter what.
Exactly,
That time.
and trying to deal with Heinrich himself, and then trying to deal with the other girls, and trying to put something together. It was amazing.
Now you still have some injury from what he did with your ears. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, he found out that we could hear him underground coming in and out, his car pulling in and out of the driveway, because his basement sat underground and we could hear him walking through the house. So he decided to take screwdrivers and damage our eardrums with screwdrivers.
Did you?
To dent our ears so that we wouldn't be able to hear him coming in and out.
And you still have difficulty with hearing?
Oh yeah, everything I listen to is loud.
Now, you have children, and you were reunited with your children.
Yes, I was.
How's that?
Ricky and Zornay, I put up for adoption right after the Heinrich thing happened. At the time, the foster parents and Zornay and Ricky were very close, and they were in a loving home. I personally, mentally or physically, wasn't mentally capable of taking care of them. So my decision for them to allow them to adopt them was, you know, was a good thing. me and LaToya stayed in touch. She came back and lived with me when she was 12, and you know, we stayed close.
I want to talk about this for a little bit because this is your book and it's really very moving. I read it and very powerful. Why are you writing this book now?
For people to know me, and for people who don't know me to know me. And I want also so that people can understand my side of the story, because a lot of people, there's so much stuff that's on the internet and in the press that people are writing that's just not true. You know, a lot of people say I was an accomplice. But I mean, there's no way I would accomplish myself into a basement and chains.
Right.
I'm hoping other women will read it and maybe get something out of it and see that, you know, you just, in life, you just don't know who you're meeting. There's like not a stamp you could put on somebody's head that says I'm a nut or I'm not a nut.
Right. So it's about taking care of precautions, taking care of yourself, and trying to be as safe as you possibly can.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Coming up, I'm going to take a closer look at how women, just like Josefina, facing difficult situations can overcome them using their inner strength. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Power Your Life. I'm your host, Joanne White. You just heard my first guest, Josefina Rivera, and she shared her shocking and yet inspiring story about how she saved herself and the other women from a life worse than hell. Not only that, many of you out there may be suffering from abuse, and I want to tell you that you don't have to. Nobody deserves to be abused, nobody. And if you are being abused, you need to know that there is help. There are hotlines, there's police, and there is a lot of information on the web so that you can really get help. And for those of us who haven't been abused but are feeling challenged by life circumstances, what's important to remember, like Josefina, is you need to have a sense of determination and to recognize that you do have ultimate power within you. You have incredible strength. There have been so many stories just like Josefina, about people who survived and suffered incredible circumstances and incredible odds and were able to move past that and thrive, and past that and feel better. So what's part of that? Part of that is, as I said, that belief in yourself, a belief in a higher power, and the ability to really in some way realize and recognize that you can have the ability to make those changes in your life. It doesn't have to be a horrifying story or something as dramatic as what Josefina endured, but whatever it is that you're going through, whatever little circumstance or large one, you can take control and recognize that there is help. Find someone to talk to. Remember that you have the ability to move behind your circumstances, and keep Josefina in your mind in terms of that's somebody that can inspire you to move beyond and to go further and to power your life and yourself. Just ahead on Power Your Life, meet the power behind the documentary film When Voices Meet. Hear about Sharon Katz's battle living in South Africa during Nelson Mandela's leadership. We'll be right back. Just last December, the world lost Nelson Mandela at the age of 95. Undoubtedly, he left a far-reaching legacy in South Africa and also around the globe. One individual who knows that well is Sharon Katz. Her multicultural South African band, Sharon Katz and the Peace Train, helped Mandela end apartheid. The documentary When Voices Meet tells the story of the Peace Train and Sharon's battle living in South Africa during Mandela's leadership. Sharon, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, it's really my pleasure. I want to just look at some of what you've done because I think it's really amazing. You were born at a time and lived at a time when people of different races in South Africa didn't come together and didn't live together, didn't socialize together, let alone play music or do anything like that. So how did you get that idea in the first place?
Well, as you said, you know, I grew up in apartheid South Africa and all races were divided by law. This was a painful thing for me as a child, to know that I couldn't mix with children of other races, that it was against the law. It didn't make sense to me. So as a child, I actually broke the laws to visit my friends in black townships. I had met a group of actors that were working with Athol Fugard. I come from a place called Port Elizabeth, which is also where Athol Fugard comes from, and he was training actors in a black township. It was strictly illegal to go there. But I made it up my mind that I was going to break the laws, which I did. My friends hid me at the back of their cars to go and visit with them, and that's how I became aware. That was my awakening of how are people living, how are the black people of South Africa, and any race for that matter that was not white, how were people able to overcome these laws? How were they able to overcome the apartheid discriminatory laws? So this was what propelled me forward to know that one day, when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, one day I would be able to also help my country.
And you know, it's amazing because you actually knew that, learned that, felt that from a very early time, and were able to pursue that. And then what you did was also just something that was unheard of in South Africa. You brought together, well, you have music, your band, and you brought together 500 children from all different races that had never ever done before, and brought them together into a choir to sing. And I saw a clip of with the Peace Train and what they did. And not only did you do that, but then you took this train with these children. What impact did that have on the children and their families and everybody else in South Africa?
Yeah, these are great questions. Thank you. I think it had an enormous impact because, first of all, people had never had that opportunity to mix across the color line in such a huge way. I brought the children together to sing together as a metaphor for the harmony that we were trying to accomplish now in the new South Africa, where for the first time all of these laws were changing. For the first time, apartheid, now the laws were changing and Mandela was free. We were going to be living together in a new democratic South Africa. And it was astounding just how quickly through, I think because of the music, you know, but how quickly these wonderful relationships were formed between children across the color line. And absolutely for me, you know, for me it was just my joy to be the one to facilitate these relationships because I had never had that opportunity when I was growing up. In South Africa, this was illegal. To have a black friend was illegal. So for me, it was thrilling to be the one to make that happen and to give children opportunity.
You know, you talk about music and bringing them together. They were dancing and singing. Do you mind if we show a clip of that?
Oh,
because I think it's wonderful when voices meet. It's so powerful.
Sharon Katz, born in racist South Africa, who seemed to have missed it all.
Sharon was willing to come to our location, and yet white people never thought of doing that in those days. And it was very dangerous for her to go there.
She was too passionate about humanity. She understood human dignity and respect. That's what we needed. South Africans who simply ignored apartheid.
There was one group of children that came from the most impoverished area, and I used to go and sing with them. These children, who have never seen electricity, didn't have running water, could barely have any food to eat. And they were so happy. The smiles on these children's faces, and it says a lot about how the human spirit can triumph over very difficult circumstances if there's music.
You know, it takes someone like a Sharon Katz no, seriously, to be able to make those kinds of changes and to have the courage, despite what the laws are and what's going on, to move past that, to bring people into a whole different orientation with one another and with freedom. What were the responses and the reactions of some of the children and their families during that time, Sharon?
Oh, the children and their families just embraced this project by and large. Of course, we did have opposition from some communities, particularly the white communities. I think that because they had the most to lose, supposedly. Right. But across the board, people wanted to come together. And as my friend John Carney said in that interview, John was the person that I used to go and visit. He was an actor when I was young. But when I interviewed him last year, he said that these laws needed to be broken, and people needed to break these laws to show that they were wrong. And the project had an enormous impact on the lives of everybody that were a part of it, and there were thousands of people that were a part of it, because it wasn't only the 500 children that were in the choir, it was their families, it was their communities, it was their schools. It had a huge impact in the city of Durban, where we staged this project, and around the country.
So everybody got involved, and everybody was changed and transformed by that experience.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Because when we went out to schools, the whole school would be buzzing about the arrival of this white woman singing in African languages and so on. It was different. It was something completely different in South Africa. And we did have the huge impact because we managed to mount the production to go around the country by train. That's where we got the name, the Peace Train.
Right.
And we've kept that name for the project ever since.
And I remember seeing the clip, a little bit of when of the movie that's about to come out this year, hopefully, right? Which
yes,
is
this
incredible.
year.
And in each car, the children are from all different races, and there they are. They're traveling all through South Africa and learning about one another and singing and also dancing. Exactly. You met Nelson Mandela. What was that experience like?
Well, meeting Mandela has defined my life. Really and truly, I was already impassioned before I met him. But since meeting him, which was over 20 years ago, I know that I have had to carry that flame. Meeting Mandela for me was a huge, huge moment when he said, Sharon, you embody the spirit of the African National Congress and the struggle that we've had for all of these years to build a non-racial democracy in South Africa. Continue. He said, go on with this work.
And you know what? You are going on, and you are a flame, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. Power Your Life will return in a moment. That's it for Power Your Life. Next time, how to beat the blues, the winter blues. A local doctor offers great tips to staying happy and healthy this time of year. Plus, meet Philadelphia's entertainment legend and philanthropist, Cal Rudman. Remember that you have the power to power your dreams and power your life.